As usual, I thought I was tired, so I went to bed. And then I just lay there, kind of listening to Laurie Anderson talk about Buddhism and death and stuff. Little incense going, fan blowing on me, kittens going to and fro, cats here and there. And I was thinking about, well, those times that I took psychedelics and went into the Samadhi tank at Altered States in Hollywood, usually with friends. We had a strange idea about partying back then. Um, and just to reiterate, I would, in preparation, first during the day I would run and I'd do my workout. And before we went to the tanks, um, shower down real nice, do about 45 minutes of hatha yoga to relax the body. And this is important because when you first go into the Samadhi tank, you keep waking yourself up a lot, bringing yourself back to your present situation, because as you relax in that water that you're floating in, your body will jerk just involuntarily. But I found that if you do a bunch of hatha yoga, it doesn't do that as much. It's already relaxed, so you go more quickly and use the time more valuably. Um, I would do the hatha yoga, and then I would do about 45 minutes to an hour of Zen meditation. Can you hear the cats? Yeah, we've got a golden white tomcat out here wooing the two mom cats. Okay, the tank. I do the Zen meditation. We would drop either LSD or psilocybin mushrooms about 45 minutes before we went into the tank, and try to come on, just as we went into the tank. Try to time it right. We did not listen to music. There were speakers in the tank, so you could bring a tape and just have them play it. But we preferred to go in with no music at all, because then you generate your own music. You're a blank slate and you can create anything. Whereas if you're forced to listen to music, then your trip is going to be about that particular piece of music. So for a typical trip, we'd sit there at Altered States waiting to go in, and they had a little place where you could have tea. There were some journals there. People would write in about their trip. This is a space for people to just chill, both before and after they were in the tank. So we get into the tank, pretty much you're starting to trip right away. You're floating in highly saline water. I forget exactly how many pounds of salt go into that water, but it is circulated through a filter. If you have to pee, then you just do it, and it gets circulated out. Gets cleaned through the filter. But anyway, so you don't wake up for that. After a while, your body just gets rid of that as you go. Typically, a session will be about an hour, although I had them leave me in. I'd said, if you don't have anybody scheduled after me, you can leave me in another half hour. Usually going more than an hour and a half gets to be a little much, but an hour and a half is just fine. So you're laying there in the water. It's body temperature, so it's warm. You're floating like this. You can put your hands over your head like that. I prefer to just keep them like this in front of me. You have to be very careful not to wipe your eyes with your fingers once they get salt on them, or you will be hating life. And suddenly your trip will be just all about the salt in your eyes. You just have to be very careful about that. You don't really feel the sides of the tank. Every once in a while you might just a little bit drift into one side and just push yourself off with your fingers and just drift into there is no sensation. It is a sensory deprivation experience. There's no sound, there's no light. You can easily get out if you get a little claustrophobic by just pushing the doorways less than a pound. Um, it's dark, it's quiet, there's nothing but you hear the sound of your own breathing. And I would start to do my Zen meditation at the same time as I was coming on, which is a neat trick if you can do it. So I would get out of my body pretty quickly. Some of the experiences that I have to demur and be like Spock and say it would be impossible to discuss the experience without a common frame of reference. And this is not arrogance or hubris, this is just a fact. Um, some people would not only not be able to understand what I'm saying, but would lack the capacity to understand what I'm saying. Um, we're talking about some things that just do not translate into the material world in any way. I can tell you there was an experience of joy and freedom that I've never ever known, not even listening to Ode to Joy, maybe not even in Being in Love, because the freedom is absolutely unconditional and timeless. Um, I remember the galactic center, and I remember saying, now this is just a metaphor, but I know I've been there. Now, selling myself short here when you consider that galaxies come in clusters, and then there are superclusters and superclusters of those. So, really saying you've only been to one galaxy center is not saying much. But as a metaphor, I've been to the center and come back. So I'm not afraid of anything anymore. Some of the experiences that I had were seeing different aspects of myself. I like to use the diamond analogy for God, that God is the diamond, and we are all different facets of this diamond, but it's all God. I saw myself as a female. This was like early 80s. Think of Marilyn Monroe, but a brunette. She's beautiful and forever young. Then I saw myself as sea mammals. Not just saw myself, but I experienced myself moving through the water. There was a very, being suspended in water, I imagine there was a very amniotic sense of being a marine creature. As a seal, I remember moving with a spiraling motion through the water and feeling the water against my skin. As a sea otter, I remember floating just on the wave and just eating this, banging open a sea urchin and eating it. And then as a dolphin, I've just felt the smoothness of my skin. Swimming through that water was just so sensual and so free, and my mind was so different and so much clearer. Um, I did not have any negative aspect of the experience that I recall. I never had a bad trip in in one of the sensory deprivation tanks. Um, I'm trying to remember. I'm just trying to let it come back to me now. Jeez, what the hell happened in that place? Well, I'll tell you how one of the sessions ended. I had entered what I believed was a void state, the void. And in this silence and in this oceanic nothing, I heard a drum. It started a long distance away, but I could tell even at a great distance that it was the biggest drum I could ever imagine. Like those Japanese drums that the guys beat with those huge batons. And it came closer and closer, and boom, boom, and it almost was like the footsteps of a giant approaching. And I started to become a little apprehensive, even though I really didn't feel fear anymore. But what was this huge thing coming toward me? And finally, it was it was earth-shatteringly loud. Boom, boom. And then I was back in my body and I realized that the sound I had been hearing was my heartbeat. So you would climb out of the sensory deprivation tank, all dimly lit in red, very fetal-like. You'd have a nice warm shower, and you had to make sure to shower out all of the salt from your hair, out of your ears. The salt was important, and again, watch not to get it in your eyes. You dry off, and go into this little room with, like I spoke of before, with the journals that you could write in, and there'd be tea for you to have, and everything was real quiet and chill. I really liked the guys who worked there. It must have been a great job. So anyway, I highly recommend the sensory deprivation tank, but it's not for beginners.